That's Simon Delaney. Welcome back to the show.
Morning. How are we?
How are you getting on?
Yeah, very good.
You're a bit better than the last time we were chatting to you.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a different 6 months for United, all right, this time.
I meant more from a health point of view from your side. You're feeling a bit...
Yes, I had the lurgy, yes. Yeah, well, I've rid myself of that and I'm back amongst the community now, thank God.
Well, and we need to get on to how great United are at the minute, of course. Tell us, first of all, the Civic Theatre, Sunday, it's in Tala. What's happening?
Yeah, so we've got the Red Devils Roadshow, which is a show that I put together with football journalist Tom McDermott, who's Manchester based. He's been covering United for years. We've been pals for years, and we came up with this notion about 6 months ago. And lucky enough, we didn't put the show on 6 months ago because I think it would have been a very different vibe in the theatre tomorrow if we had. But the idea was that it was a group. We could put together a group therapy session for United fans, because I have a WhatsApp group with various United fans, celebs and mates and that in it, and over the last sort of 6-7 years that the group's been running, it has been the therapy group, so we decided we might try and share that with the rest of the United fans out there. So we put together this 2-hour show. We've got former players coming on. We've got Al Foran, a big United fan. He's going to be on the show too, and then we're going to talk about, you know what, one thing that I wanted to talk about, Adrian, was the connection between United and Ireland. You know, why does a club in the northwest of England have such a big support here? And we look at that, and I was lucky enough a couple of years ago to do a documentary for MUTV which looked into that question. So we're going to be talking about that. We're going to pick our best all-time United 11s. We're going to pick our worst all-time United 11. We're going to ask the audience to do the same. We're going to have a Q&A with the audience, talk about the current situation, the current crop, the players, the transfer market, which of course is open. And of course we're on the day after the Manchester derby, so
you'll be celebrating.
That goes. I think we could be.
Before we go down that path, what was your major conclusion about the Irish connection? Was it to do with the Giles and the pre-Giles, the player side? Was it a success, or what was your conclusion on it?
It's a lot of things. I mean, I toured around Ireland and the UK interviewing various people for that documentary, and you know, it opened my eyes as a United fan to, you know, like a lot of United fans don't think football existed before 1992, which of course it did, but it was things like the Munich air disaster, you know, which obviously had some Irish involvement in that. Liam Whelan was one of the players who was killed. He scored 52 goals in the season before the Munich air disaster. He was quite the player, and his funeral back in Dublin, there were, I think it was 300,000 people on the streets. You know, that kind of connection. Then it goes back to emigration as well. You know, when the Irish left here, they went to London, to Liverpool, to Manchester, and a lot of the Irish ended up working on the railways in Manchester. And the Lancashire Railways had a football team, which then became Newton Heath, which then became Manchester United. So they've had support right the way through, and one of the other things I did in the show was I tried to come up with a United made up exclusively by Irish players. That was my challenge, and I did, and I picked a United team made up solely of Irish players, and it's a team that could win the World Cup and it'll win the Premier League. It's a super team, but we went back and discovered that the first player who played for United, which was back in the late 1890s, a guy called John Pedden from Belfast. It was a fascinating look at why the connection is so strong between United and Ireland. So we're going to be talking about that, as well as the current state of the club.
If you need to grab a drink of water, by the way, go for it. I've just done the same thing myself here.
I have my cup of tea.
You have your cup of tea. Good man. Do you have that team in front of
you? The United Irish 11?
Yeah.
I can probably remember off by heart. It's Harry Gregg in goal. Moran and McGrath centre half, right back Dennis Irwin, left back Tony Dunn, and then a 3-man midfield of Keane, Sammy McIlroy and Norman Whiteside, and up front then George Best and Frank Stapleton. It's not a bad team, is it?
Oh my God. Who are we leaving on the cutting room floor? That's off the charts.
There's a lot of people on the bench. Like John is on the bench. John O'Shea.
John O'Shea on goals even, as a sub for Harry Gregg maybe.
Yeah, exactly. There's a rake of players on the bench, but it was a serious team. And the great thing about doing the documentary was that I went and I met my heroes. Like I interviewed Paul McGrath and Kevin Moran and Norman Whiteside actually was the best one, because I started the interview with Norman Whiteside by saying, Norman, the first time I ever cut somebody's photograph out of a newspaper and stuck it in a scrapbook, it was his. And like I remember the exact moment he scored in the semi-final of the FA Cup against Arsenal, a cracking left-footer volley, I think 83, I think it was. And he was my man, he was my player. And so getting to meet him and chat to him about being in the dressing room, and also talking to Paul McGrath about the importance of having other Irish voices in the dressing room when he went over, as he said, he was so enamoured and in awe of just the physical size of Old Trafford. And he said, I remember walking in the dressing room and seeing Brian Robson and thinking, oh Jesus Christ, there's Brian Robson. And he said, and he shared digs with Norman Whitehead, and he said they didn't always get on because, as he said himself, they were both from different political sides of the tracks, but he said we eventually became great mates. But he said that was important for him to have that other Irish voice in the dressing room to help him settle in.
It might seem like an obvious thing to say, Simon, but even when you're, on match days at Old Trafford, and it's the same for Liverpool and other clubs as well.
Yeah.
But the Irish influence, it cannot be understated how many Irish fans are over there in the pubs and in the city centre before games. It's quite incredible. It
is incredible, and it's the same for Leeds as well. You go to the airport any weekend, you'll see that makeup of Leeds jerseys, United jerseys, Liverpool jerseys. It is quite staggering, and it all goes back to the same thing. It goes back to emigration, to Irish families going over there, and then it helps them when there's Irish players at the club. I mean, United have always had a strong Irish connection, not so much in the recent years, but there's always been a huge Irish influence at the club in terms of the players. And when you're seeing Eamon Dunphy talks about it in the documentary. He talks about, United fans, their connection with Liam Whelan, or Billy Whelan as he was known. He said, when you're seeing a fella from your area playing for Manchester United, it just connects you straight away to it, But yeah, absolutely, the airport's packed with the various different jerseys on Saturday mornings. It's incredible.
And it's like, I know some people who are strictly fans of the League of Ireland and don't touch on any teams over in England sometimes get annoyed, and they're like, but Jesus, could you not support the team local to you? But there's such a massive cohort of fans now who do support their local League of Ireland team and also head over to England for these matches as well, Simon.
Of course there are. I mean, my interest in football started with the League of Ireland. My father was from Cadbury. He was a big Bows fan. I, for some reason, ended up as a Shells fan. I can't remember why or how. Probably because my dad was a Bows fan. But I remember going to Dalymount and watching the derbies up there, and being lifted over the turnstile because you were too small to push through them yourself and all that. So, the League of Ireland absolutely started my interest, and I still keep an eye on Shells results, etc. But look, just because that argument does my head in when you see it on Twitter. I bet you've never been to a League of Ireland game. Well, I've never been to a basketball game either. Doesn't mean I can't like basketball. You know what I mean? I watch American football. I've never been to an American football game. You're allowed to be a fan of these sports. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I'd be with you on that one for sure. Come here. You mentioned the Manchester derby, so half 12 at Old Trafford tomorrow. And Rio Ferdinand, I had to do a double take this morning in some of the papers. He's saying that the jury is still out on Erik ten Hag. Now, the jury will be back, obviously, if they get the win tomorrow. But it sort of felt to me as if the jury was already back and they were pretty happy.
Yeah, no, I saw you, Shane, mention the whole thing. If put the contract on the table, it's a bit rich, Rio, coming from it. The jury's not still out, and I'm saying that as a United fan and as someone who talks to United fans all the time. He is the man for the job. There's no question about it. When you've gone one defeat, I think in 19 now since the last Manchester derby, I think he's turned the club around, and I don't mean that we're now going to be champions for the next 10 years. That's not what I mean. What I mean is he's turned the attitude around. He's turned the dressing room around. He's got rid of most of the toxicity that was in that dressing room. There's still a little bit there, I think, but I think what we can all see is that he's the change in the attitude towards discipline and attitude. You turn up late for a meeting. He had it with Garnacho. Last year he did it. He dropped him. Rashford did the same thing. He dropped Rashford, and I like that. I remember Fergie did that back in the day with Beckham. If you remember the famous night that Beckham came out of the nightclub in London wearing the sarong. Do you remember that? And I think they had a Champions League quarter-final the next day at Old Trafford. And he didn't just drop him, but he made him come to the ground and sit in the stands and watch the game. Now, they were back in the days when United were so strong he could leave Beckham out. But, that discipline was there. Now, Fergie had his falling out with various different players and coaching staff over the years. That comes with that, I think. It's the same with Roy Keane. It's that attitude. It comes with that. And I think Ten Hag has absolutely changed that attitude and that atmosphere, and he's changed the style of football. and we're certainly in a better place tomorrow going into the Manchester derby than we were going into the last one. I would be confident, particularly because City they're not firing on all cylinders, and the fact that it's at Old Trafford, I fancy us tomorrow. Yeah, hopefully.
That attitude question, Simon, is a big one, I think, because even the battle with Cristiano Ronaldo, I mean, Ten Hag came out far better than Ronaldo did, certainly from that. And even Andy Mitten was on with us during the week, and he was talking about the fact that, under maybe Louis van Gaal, it was, if a player was 20-30 seconds late for a meeting, there was big fines, and it's not that strict. But at the same time, he's laying down the law in a very simple way. Just break the rules and you'll be dropped. And look, he took Rashford on in that game and he ends up scoring the winner. So
exactly, and it leads to everything else, Shane. It's all about attitude. And that also leads into the type of player that he wants at that club. He wants players who are going to work, who are physically able to do what he wants them to do, and will do a job for him and do a job for their teammates. He doesn't want show ponies. He doesn't want prima donnas. Clearly he doesn't. And I think that will inform the transfer windows over the next 18, 24 months as to what type of player that come in. Yes, the transfer budget will inform that as well, but I think Ten Hag is very clear on what type of player he wants to bring in. And you hear every manager saying that, and I have a pain in my arse listening to that. Well, we'll only get the right player. The player has to be right for us. What does that mean? What does that mean? We're not just going to buy someone willy-nilly. Well, obviously you're not. I mean, that's, we only want the player who will fit into what we need to work in here. I don't get that, but I think it informs those disciplinary attitudes. Everything leads into a culture at the club. Because there's no doubt about it, the culture over the previous 6 years, 5-6 years, was rotten from top to bottom. Now, we've still got the issue of our lovely absentee parasitic owners who are still sunbathing in Florida. But we're going to talk about that on Sunday as well, because Tom, my co-host, is fairly well connected in terms of what's happening with the sale, how soon is it going to happen, who's it going to be, who's going to buy us, because that, again, above anything else, will influence then where we go over the next 2 to 5 years.
What did you make of the Wout Weghorst signing? Sounds like he has to be registered by noon today, I think, to play tomorrow, which you'd imagine will be. It's an interesting one.
Yeah. It is an interesting one, and we were talking about that in the WhatsApp group, and a striker is a striker, and we need bodies, we need warm bodies. We've got a huge fixture congestion pile up coming. We've got big games in the league. We've got the small matter of a quarter final against Barca in the Europa League. We're still in 2 cup competitions, so he needs bodies. He can't be relying on Rashford and the most miserable football in the world, Martial, to keep that going. I mean, back in the heyday, when Fergie was at his pomp, he had 4 strikers. He had Colin York, Sheringham and Solskjaer, and he rotated them throughout the season, and that's how you handle that fixture congestion. I think Weghorst will come in and do a job. 6'6". His stats are very impressive. A goal every 2 games in Germany. Didn't do it at Burnley, but he was surrounded by Drek at Burnley and they went down. His pressing stats. No, I don't go in for all that horse shite about stats and expected goal. Oh, Jesus Christ, that gives me a pain behind my left eye when I see that stack come up. I don't know what it means. And my 14-year-old says to me, "He's United mad. What's that mean, Dad?" I said, "I haven't got a baldy, not a clue." But Weghorst stats, his pressing stats are incredible, and again, that goes back to. That's the type of player that Ten Hag wants. He wants someone who's going to come in and work his nuts off running up and down that pitch. And at 6'6", he's going to be a dangerous set pieces, and we all saw that at the World Cup against Argentina. So I think he'll come in, I think he'll score goals. Listen, he mightn't light the place up, but if he scores a half a dozen goals, important goals for us over the next 6 months, happy days. And he's costing you no money. It's a no-brainer for me.
Wave goodbye to him in the next window. What about so obviously in terms of the game tomorrow, obviously looking at City over the last while, and we were chatting to an Arsenal reporter earlier on about the anticipation of watching City at the minute, because it's not City of old, and like oddly, and I'm not suggesting for 1 second that his goals have dried up. He's just not scoring at the rate that he was before the World Cup, but even Haaland doesn't look like the player that he was. He sort of snatched at a chance against Chelsea there that 10 times out of 10 before the World Cup goes into the back of the net. Maybe I'm trying to offer you faint hope here, but have you what's your sense of City?
Well, there's no better opportunity to get your season back on track if you're Haaland than banging in a goal or two at Old Trafford tomorrow, because he clearly that's the game he wants to score in, and he said that when he signed. He said that before he kicked the ball for City. He was asked what teams he looking forward most to playing, and that's United, because of what happened obviously with his dad, etc., etc. There's history there, so that boy will be fired up. Now he's coming up against the Butcher of Amsterdam. He's going to come up against Martinez, who will be up to about just past his hip, I'd say, but I wouldn't fancy playing against Martinez. Martinez is fired up. He came on as a cameo the other night, played well again, even for a short period of time that he was on. Look, obviously every manager goes into a game against City and asks the question, how do we deal with Haaland? And then every manager will say, it's not just Haaland, there's 10 other players in the pitch. It's about systems. I think Ten Hag will have a system. I think we'll press. I think we'll be happy enough to sit in, and then he'll look for pace on the counter-attack with Rashford, with Bruno, with whoever if he has Anthony out there. Anthony's a bit worrying me now a bit at the minute, but that's another conversation. So it's not just about keeping Haaland quiet, it's keeping that attack quiet. So I think it's going to be a cracking game. I don't think it'll be 0-0, that's for sure. With your Cue the 0-0 draw.
Exactly, yeah. No chance. With your other hat on, have you did you enjoy the Banshees of Inisherin success and the reaction over the last few days? Or were you sitting there thinking, put me in, coach, put me in?
Lord, I put my hand up and say I haven't seen the movie yet, but obviously it's incredibly good for the Irish film industry when a movie like that does what it does on the international stage. It's done the Golden Globes. It'll probably roll through the BAFTAs now as well, and then into the Oscars. It will do the Irish film industry absolutely no harm at all. Now, it's very busy at the moment, thank God. There's quite a lot of stuff filming in and around Ardmore and other studio spaces around the country. Up north, I'm currently filming up in Belfast since last October. There's a lot happening here. And things like that, things like an international success, just reminds people, yes, we're here, and also we have cracking tax breaks. If you want to come and spend your dollars here and make your movie.
We're open for business.
Yeah.
Right, it's the Civic Theatre in Tala on Sunday. It's the Red Devils Roadshow, and you've put up details of that in your social accounts. We've retweeted that, so if people are looking for it, just head over and check that out. And also, I need to mention by contract, of course, your podcast with the irrepressible, I don't know what exactly moniker he should have there, but Aidan Power as well.
Did he tell you to say irrepressible?
He did, yeah. He just texted me there and said, listen, what's the best thing you can come up with?
Adrian, he didn't actually, he's not up yet, let's be honest.
Good point. Simon, thanks a million. Pleasure as always.
A pleasure. Have a great day, guys.
Cheers.